Hi everyone. This week in Week 2 assignment worksheet, we're going to be working on finding information to help us write the newsletter we began last week in Week 1. When we look for information, we're searching for articles or books that will give us the information we need to share to our newsletter audience or readers. Remember that this is a geriatric or older audience. Older adults, elderly adults that will be reading the newsletter. In Part 1, we'll be looking for some articles with things that might interest our readers to provide them with information that will be helpful to them. For this part, you'll need to go to the internet or to LIRN, which is UMA's library. To access LRN, visit the website that I've provided on the main screen in the announcements. There, you can find 2 articles that you think will be interesting for your newsletter. Those are known as your sources. In other words, they're the source of your information. Put those sources into a format like this. Source 1 would be the first article that you find. So for instance, we're going to list the title of the author. If there's no author in any of the websites that you're doing, and sometimes there isn't an author, leave it blank. List the publisher and the copyright year, and do the same for the second one. So here we're going to type in the type of source. Maybe it's a website, the author, author's name. If there is no author, leave it blank. Your publisher, perhaps that's the name. Copyright year, if it has a copyright year on the article, it will be at the very bottom of the article. If not, use the current year. Okay? Source 2, you're going to do the exact same thing, because remember, you're going to need to find 2 separate web articles about your subject. Okay, for Part 2, you will create an outline of some of the ideas you put together in Week 1 for your newsletter. Now remember, in Week 1, you've been kind of brainstorming and thinking about what you would like to tell the senior citizens, or perhaps the geriatric group, or the doctors in the office where you're working. Let's do an example of how an outline might look. We're going to have main ideas. So your main idea might be that you want to do healthy eating or healthy eating habits. So maybe you're going to put, let's see, something like, well, that's not going to let me type, healthy foods. Okay? So if you have healthy foods for your main idea, then subtopic would be benefits of fruits and vegetables. That could be a subtopic. Another subtopic might be benefits of lower sodium foods. Next, you're going to go down to another main idea that you have. Now, we're still under the topic of healthy eating. You might want to say your second or B would be something like portion control. So what would be a good subtopic for portion control? Well, how to learn to measure portions. That might be one. Another one would be how to avoid cravings, so you wouldn't go out and snack. Your third main idea to go along with healthy eating might be something like weight management. So a subtopic for that would be exercise routines. And on top of that, portion control. Now we have our main ideas and we have our subtopics. Let's narrow it down a little bit more in Section 3. In Section 3, we're going to take that same main ideas, the same 3 that we had up in the other ones. That was healthy foods for A, portion control in B, and weight management in C. Now remember that we did do some subtopics, basics of fruits and vegetables. Now we're going to take the subtopics and narrow them down even smaller. So let's go down and look at those. Our subtopic then, under healthy foods, the subtopic was benefits of fruits and vegetables. Remember, we had that at the top. Now we're going to narrow that down a little bit more and maybe say something about those. How about strawberries are good for your heart? Let's say another thing. Maybe kiwi is good for your liver. Or a third one might be tomatoes are good for the prostate. Okay? These are all things that geriatric patients and the elderly might need to know. Now remember, our second subtopic was benefits of lower sodium foods. Okay, so let's go back down and put that. Whoop. Benefits of lower sodium foods. Okay, so now we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be learning about the different things. So maybe you would put something like the benefits of lower sodium food, lower blood pressure, and so forth and so on. You're going to fill these in. Your second main idea, remember that in the second main idea was portion control. Okay, one of the subtopics for portion control was to learn to measure portions. Okay, here you're going to also put a detail down to learning to measure portions. Perhaps you would use something like use a cooking scale. Okay, and you would fill in 2 more. Down here you're going to have another subtopic. Remember what they were. You're going to take those, learn how to measure portions, how to avoid cravings. Okay, you're going to come in and put how to avoid cravings. Then you're going to think up 3 areas that are going to deal with how to avoid cravings. In your third, you're going to do the exact same thing as you did in the other 2. You're simply narrowing down your main idea. Okay, so your main idea for the third one was weight management. Here again, you're going to take exercise routines, okay, and you're going to come up with something that will answer that and your other subtopic. And that's how you build a very, very well done outline. Okay, so that when you're finished, you can take all of this and you can take a look at it, and you've pretty much got your newsletter written, because you've got all the topics and all the subtopics in there for when you're ready to sit down and start writing your newsletter. Okay, so that's an overview of how to do week 2's assignment, and I hope you found it helpful. Thank you.